are listening to the Star Lores Podcast.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Are you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder?
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Dizygotic, or fraternal twins, are the result of two cellular ovum being released and fertilized at the same time. Although this phenomenon can be artificially created via hormonal therapy, some humans do this naturally as a rare genetic trait. Thus, this ability can be inherited and passed down generationally, and become a more frequent occurrence within a family line where this has already occurred in the past. And so, the fraternal twins Luke and Leia are carriers of this twin-producing genetic quirk, which finds itself expressed again in Leia's twin children, Jacen and Jaina. Although no more genetically similar to each other as any other siblings, unlike identical twins, the two solos shared a unique bond through the Force and shared experiences growing up. Inseparable as youth, the two were very close and went through all the same troubles, trials, and tribulations that the galaxy threw at them. Because of the perils of their youth, the twins were placed under intense security and did not spend much time with other children, strengthening the bond between them and tending towards problematic behaviors for their caregivers.
Jedi Praxium. By the time Jacen and his sister had been admitted to Luke's Jedi Praxium, he had grown into an empathetic young man. Jacen was able to commune with beings through the Force and had a special connection to nature and animals, often being able to telepathically gauge their needs. This attachment to life made him sensitive to the needs of all living things, but he would often become aloof and distant from sentience, including his sister, preferring the accompaniment of animals. Jacen was very powerful in the Force, which lent him to ignore physical or strenuous activity, as he felt he could achieve anything he needed through his powers. However, this sedentary attitude passed with age and maturity. Here the twins befriended Luke's other pupil. Most notably for Jacen was Tenel Kajo, the daughter of the ruling house of the Happies Consortium. Jacen was immediately smitten with the girl, and his humor was often lost on her as he tried to make her laugh. Jacen would also keep a collection of animals he found in the jungles of Yavin 4 in his quarters. An elegant weapon.
Jacen was known to be contemplative and philosophical, unlike his reactionary sister, and had more than one occasion reason to eschew the use of the Force. During his capture with that of his sister and Lobaka by the Shadow Academy, Jacen was forced to fight a holoprojection of Darth Vader. The holographic shroud was dropped, however, and Jacen discovered that he had been dueling his sister all along, an event that soured him to the prospect of violence and earned respect for the use of a lightsaber, an item he had coveted since first becoming a prospective Jedi. Despite this event, the twins escaped and eventually built their own lightsabers. Jacen used a rare Coruscant gem he had acquired at Lando's mining station in orbit over Yavin Prime, which gave his blade a green color. The same color blade coincidentally used by Jedi consulars of the past. He would have another negative incident with the mystical Jedi weapon with his sparring partner and swain, Tenel Ka. Her lightsaber was faulty and shorted out during a blade lock. Jacen's blade carried through and took her arm just above the elbow, in typical Skywalker fashion. Solo was devastated, and further grieved when her family came to whisk her back to the Happies cluster to recover. Jacen was able to make amends with Tenelka, and the two began their budding romance.
Apprentice, philosopher. Luke Skywalker apprenticed young Jacen and his brother Anakin in the ways of the Force. As he matured, he took to studying the ways of the old Jedi that had been extinguished in the times of his birth. He believed that a Jedi's connection to the Force was deeply personal and spiritual, and rebuffed his uncle's suggestion of reforming a Jedi Council. Jacen felt that a Jedi should be led by the Force rather than by the edicts of a lofty position, no doubt sensing the arrogance that led to the eventual fall of the old Jedi Order. Jacen would argue about the nature of the Force with his younger brother, who saw the Force as a means to uphold peace and order. Whereas Jacen knew the path of a Jedi should be to seek harmony and understanding with the Force. Ironically, Jacen was so convinced of his views that it made him arrogant and prideful, dismissing or arguing with anyone who saw things differently. Another point of connection between the fledgling Republic and Luke's new Jedi Order was the political involvement that these new Jedi would take. Some argued for a subservience of the Jedi to the Republic, while others wished to detach the Order completely as to not repeat the mistakes of the past. Jacen was always eager to share his ideas and debate these larger questions, becoming more and more a philosopher as he grew and trained. Victory at any cost.
Jacen shared his early victories with his siblings at the beginning of the war with the Yuuzhan Vong and their many losses. The war took such a toll on the young Solo that he even debated abandoning his path as a Jedi altogether, as the Order had been drawn into the conflict. He persisted, however, but could not shake the gnawing seed of doubt. He fought on the front lines of the war, undertaking dangerous surface-level commando raids, often supported by his sister who would fly covering missions. The war took its toll on his mind, and the doubts became so strong that Jacen gave up the ways of the Jedi for a time, even giving up the use of the Force altogether, instead retreating to help refugees of the war rather than be an active participant, unable to reconcile his views on peace and what it meant to be a Jedi in times of conflict. This was short-lived, however, when a group of refugees, along with his mother, came under direct threat from the Vong forces. Solo realized he had to use the Force to protect his loved ones and defeat the menace. Despite his hiatus from the war effort, he soon returned to the fight. He participated in the fateful commando raid with his siblings and other Jedi that saw his youngest brother killed while performing a rearguard action so the rest of the strike team could continue the mission. Jacen would begin to lose touch with his sister, who was overcome with grief and rage, and began to delve deeply into the dark side. The mission would be a success thanks to Jacen finding and eliminating the Voxan Queen, however, and he would be separated from the rest of the strike team and left behind, and thought dead. Jacen was actually captured by the Vong, thanks to treacherous former Jedi named Vergir.
Death, rebirth. The Vong were cruel captors and placed Jacen into a biological device known as the Embrace of Pain. The contraption was devised for optimum administration of pain and would read, analyze, and inflict the maximum tolerable levels of pain without killing its victim. The Vong did not necessarily see the device as strictly torture, however, and would often use it as a masochistic form of meditation. The device was especially cruel when used against Jedi, as it inflicted unknowable suffering, seen as one of the steps towards the dark side, would further tempt a Jedi towards its embrace. Jacen's physical torment was also compounded as he was still grieving the recent death of his brother, as well as being psychologically tormented by his captors. Solo, unbroken by his test, began to use pain as a reservoir of strength and was released from his torment. Now enlightened to the Vong's pain-worshipping epistemology, Solo's beliefs would be challenged further as the Verger, the treacherous former Jedi allied with the Vong, began to cause Solo to question the definitions of Jedi and Sith and the nature of the Force, opening Solo further to practicing dark side techniques. Verger would become Jacen's tutor in captivity, and the two grew a unique bond. Jacen also discovered his ability to interact with the various biological organisms that constituted Yuuzhan Vong technology through his same empathic gifts that allowed him to commune with creatures and animals. While Jacen learned much during his dark time, he also realized he could access a wealth of power through the dark side and manipulation of the Vong, using it to still help others. Jacen realized his abilities to internalize pain, as well as inevitably inflict it on others, could still be used to save people. His perception of the galaxy had been fundamentally changed as he saw the world was in an inescapable paradox. By hurting the Vong, he was able to help the Vong slaves, and by embracing the torment inflicted on him by his captors, he would become stronger. The feedback loop made Solo more and more powerful, and the Vong sought to convert the wayward Jedi into their religion. Jacen, having unlocked his own powers, feigned conversion into the religion as a means to his own ends. The Vong, seeing Jacen's legendary sister Jaina as an embodiment of one of their gods, also came to revere Jacen as the twin god Yun Harla, and wanted to orchestrate a duel between the siblings, as twinship and fratricide were rare and sacred markers of ascended individuals. Jacen, playing along, sought to destroy the Vong religion from within. Through his deception, Solo was able to gain access to the world brain and convince it to confound the Vong's attempt at perfection by forcing them to acknowledge imperfection. His plan fulfilled, Solo made for an escape. Verger revealed that she had been a Jedi since the fall of the Republic and had encountered the Vong threat many years ago. She, like Jacen, decided to study this new menace from the inside and work with them in order to learn more about them, and eventually, hopefully, defeat them, even in exchange for her own soul. Satisfied that Jacen had learned the same lesson, the two joined in their escape of Vong captivity and reunited with the Republic, the Jedi, and Jacen's family. Jacen suppressed his new outlook on the galaxy, as he knew his newfound beliefs about the nature of the Force and the power he could unlock would not be well regarded by his peers. Verger had not told the entire truth, however. She had yet another mission, unbeknownst to Jacen, the Jedi, or the Republic. Despite her ulterior motives, the two were wellsprings of valuable intelligence and insight into the Yuuzhan Vong. She would continue to apprentice Jacen as the two now shared unorthodox Jedi beliefs. Ascension.
As the war with the Vong concluded, the Solo twins would experience more loss. Jedi Master Vergere met her fate saving the twins in a Vong encounter, among countless other Jedi. The galaxy was picking up the pieces and mounting the losses of untold trillions. As for the Solo family, the losses and grief were personal. Having lost 2 members of their own family, their foster uncle Chewbacca and their younger brother Anakin, while Jaina committed to being a better Jedi to honor the memories of all those she had lost in the war, Jacen internalized his anguish. The war had made heroes of the siblings, who acquired much public attention, and Jacen, having masterminded many battles against the Vong, had ascended politically. Jacen and Jaina were also regarded Jedi Knights within the Order as well. Jacen and Jaina and Luke Skywalker face off against the Supreme Overlord of the Yuuzhan Vong and ended the war personally. Jacen himself single-handedly defeated the Overlord by becoming one with the Force, melding his living self with the Force. He became an avatar of light, his body ensconced in golden luminescence, and destroyed the leader of the Vong.
Student of the Force. After a short period returning as a teacher at the Jedi Praxium in the aftermath of the war, Jacen decided that he would continue to study the Force, seeing himself as an eternal student. He left the Order and made plans to travel and live amongst various other Force-using sects to expand his overall understanding of the Force. He spent time amongst the Janissari, witches of Dathomir, and many more. He learned many new techniques and skills on his travels, including the ability to astrally project himself back in time to witness but not interact with historical events. He also learned to perceive visions of the future and became aware of the fount of the Force in the Maw and the dark side taint of Abeloth. Most concerning of all, however, was his vision of a new Dark Lord sitting upon a throne surrounded by followers. Certain to prevent this emerging threat, Jacen promised himself to end this hitherto unforeseen menace before it could even begin, by any means necessary. Jacen's wandering ended after he was drawn to the Killik invasion and the Dark Nest crisis. Reunited with his family, including his now late teenage cousin Ben Skywalker, son of Luke and Mara Jade, Solo returned to the Jedi. He had kept much of his journeying secret, as well as the knowledge he acquired on his pilgrimage, giving over only a fraction of his accounts to the Jedi. Jacen was seen as a wise but withdrawn, mysterious, and aloof. He would also reunite with his childhood friend and former Jedi, Tenel Kajo, who had ascended the throne of the Hapes Consortium. Jacen had approached the Queen to ask for her assistance in navigating the Killik and Chiss situation. Tenel Ka and the Jedi Knight had also reignited long-standing romantic passions, and Jacen unknowingly impregnated the Queen before returning to the Jedi Temple. The conflict saw the Jedi split on government oversight and Jedi interests, where Jacen firmly believed that the Jedi should be beholden only to the Jedi, as governments were prone to corruption. Jacen also became an extreme utilitarian, willing to sacrifice anything in the name of the greater good. After the Jedi were summoned to investigate a series of weird events on the planet Lord, Jacen crossed paths with a woman who identified herself as Brisha Sayo, who was behind the strange events. Sayo lured Jacen, Ben Skywalker, and another Jedi, Nalani Din, to her home on a remote asteroid that had once been the lair of a Sith Lord named Darth Vectivus. She claimed that the Sith Lord was alive deep within the caverns of the asteroid, but managed to isolate Jacen from the other 2 Jedi. Her Sayo revealed her true identity as Lumia, the Dark Lady of the Sith. Lumia was a former Imperial agent and had learned much of the ways of the Sith from Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine. She introduced Darth Vectivus' ideological subset of the Sith teaching that, much like Jacen, sought to use the dark side as a tool for the greater good. Jacen, who had an already tenuous relationship with Jedi orthodoxy since his journeys to other Force-using sects, as well as the corrupted teachings of the Jedi Verger, who had also been a student of the Dark Woman, and helped to groom Jacen to this point. Jacen was seduced by the prospect that he could use the dark side for good. When the Jedi Knight Nalani Din attempted to arrest Lumia, Jacen, able to glimpse the future, saw that he had to stop her arrest in order to prevent Luke Skywalker from dying at his own hands. In the name of preventing this future, Jacen killed his Jedi compatriot and agreed to learn more about the ways of the Sith from Lumia. After weaving an elaborate lie about what had occurred on the asteroid and the death of Nalani, Jacen found Ben and the two returned back to Coruscant, now an embedded agent of the Sith. Rise and fall.
Jacen became more politically active upon his return, and met with high-ranking Galactic Alliance officials in regards to the Corellian crisis. Jacen advised harsh military action against Corellian independence, an action that drove a wedge between himself and his father Han. Jacen would be appointed the head of the Galactic Alliance Guard, a counter-terrorist task force. The commission was rejected by his aunt Mara Jade, who thought the force could easily devolve into a secret police force. Jacen had also summoned his mistress, Lumia, to Coruscant to continue to train him in the dark side. Lumia advised Jacen to take on his own dark apprentice, and he set his sights on his cousin, Ben Skywalker, who he appointed as an officer within the Galactic Alliance Guard, or GAG. Jacen then began persecuting Corellians by blocking the world and rounding up any off-world Corellians into camps. As leader of the GAG, Solo had also captured and killed Alan Vel, the daughter of Boba Fett, who had taken an assassination contract on the Solo family. He would continue to escalate his actions against Corellia, and even had his own sister Jaina Solo court-martialed for disobeying an order to fire on a disarmed vessel attempting to flee the blockade. He would continue to act ruthlessly, killing and imprisoning anyone he deemed a threat to galactic stability, including signing an arrest warrant for his own parents, Han and Leia. Jacen would commission a special Star Destroyer with cloaking abilities and gravity well projectors that he named in his younger brother's memory, the Anakin Solo, that would serve as Jacen's flagship. Despite his ancestral heritage, Jacen had convinced himself that, though he dabbled in the dark side, it was for a greater cause, unlike his grandfather Anakin, who was spurred out of personal fear and loss, reasons Jacen considered selfish and far from his own. He would often flow walk, or glimpse into the past, while at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, and observe and contrast his own motives against those of his grandfather's. Lumia informed Jacen that in order to complete his full transcendence as a Sith, he would have to sacrifice that which he loved. Jacen contemplated what this meant, and even entertained his own secret lover Tenel Ka and their daughter, Alana, as possible candidates, though he loved both, ironically putting them in danger. Jacen, however, determined that his sacrifice would be his own parents, whom he had continually estimated to be a destabilizing factor in politics, and suspected that they had been working against Tenel Ka and the Hapes Consortium. Though he later discovered this was not the case. Jacen had also become a corrupting influence within Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy, retaining the loyalty and service of his former apprentices and sponsorees, whom Solo thought to seduce to the dark side as well. Despite all this, Jacen and the GAG had gone to Hapes to help the Queen Tenel Ka against a traitorous threat. The notorious bounty hunter Aurra Sing had taken a contract to assassinate Tenel Ka and Jacen's daughter. At the same time, Luke and Mara Jade had grown highly suspicious of Jacen's increasing despotism and suspected a possible connection to Lumia. In order to hide their cooperation, Jacen allowed Ben to be discharged from the GIG at Luke and Mara's request, and feigned a hunt for whoever was working with Lumia within the GIG. Despite running afoul of these closest to him, Jacen would grow in popularity within the public at large, seen as a take-charge leader and keeper of the peace through his aggressive policies. When the Corellians were finally able to break the blockade, they were able to rally a host of other like-minded worlds who believed that the Galactic Alliance had become tyrannical and overbearing. They dubbed themselves the Confederation of Worlds and sought to go to war with the Galactic Alliance, instigating the Second Galactic Civil War. Through the conflict, Jacen was granted more and more political power to the point where he could unilaterally make galactic-scale decisions with little to no oversight, becoming the joint head of state with Cha Niethel. Jacen and Lumia would continue to corrupt Ben Skywalker by sending him on errands to collect Sith artifacts and escalating suspicions by Luke and Mara. Mara, after discovering that Jacen was working in league with Lumia, confronted her nephew. At first, Mara offered Jacen a chance at redemption, but the situation soon escalated to life and death struggle. Jacen, though badly wounded by his aunt, killed Mara Jade Skywalker on the planet Kavan. Despite their close relationship, Jacen realized that the sacrifice he needed to make was not the lives of his loved ones, but the deep admiration and respect he commanded from Ben Skywalker. Having committed this sacrifice, Jacen Solo transcended and appointed himself Darth Caedus.
Twin tragedy. The Waylay suspicion that Jacen had killed his aunt, Lumia, had agreed to make her own sacrifice and take the fall for her murder. She would be hunted down and killed by Luke Skywalker. Despite her death, it soon became apparent that she was not Mara Jade's assassin. Caedus would continue to manipulate Vence from his position of power and seduce his younger brother's former lover, Tahiri Vela, to the dark side. Vela, still grief-stricken by the death of Anakin Solo, was easy prey for the new Sith Lord. He also sent a garrison of GAG commandos to the Jedi Academy under the guise of protection, but more so as an insurance policy to keep the Jedi in check, especially by holding younglings hostage if the situation devolved to such a level. As the war continued, Ben Skywalker soon realized that Caedus had killed his mother and sought to avenge her by feigning his continued loyalty while waiting for his chance to strike. Meanwhile, Caedus, already predicting young Ben's true objectives, sought to nurture his hatred and continue his seduction to the dark side. During the bombardment of Kashyyyk, and Caedus ordering the sack of the Jedi Temple at Ossus, Ben Skywalker attempted to strike at his cousin. His attack failed, and he was captured and placed an embrace of pain that Caedus had managed to salvage from the Yuuzhan Vong. In a desperate ploy, Luke Skywalker and Jacen's twin sister Jaina Solo attacked his fleet. The encounter ended in a grueling battle between Luke and Caedus, both inflicting grievous injuries on one another, and Ben Solo was able to escape in the melee. Luke gained the upper hand over his nephew, critically injuring but refusing to kill him, as he feared both he and his son had come too close to the dark side due to their personal tragedies at the death of Mara Jade. Luke opted to retreat, leaving Caedus to die. Legacy of the Force.
Cadus, much like his grandfather, was able to survive the crippling injuries that would have killed an average man. Not yet fully recovered, Cadus set himself back to the task of fighting his war. Betrayed now by his lover after her discovery at what Jacen had become, the Queen of Hades sided with the emergent Jedi coalition, seeking to stop the rampaging Galactic Alliance. She personally gave the command to fire on Cadus' ship. He managed to escape and kidnap his own daughter as leverage to regain the Queen's military assets for the war. Cadus' command had started splintering, however, as Imperial remnants of the Galactic Alliance began withdrawing their allegiance. He would survive many assassination attempts by his increasing enemies, including a Jedi strike team headed up by Kyle Katarn. Cadus bested them, however, running his Jedi Battlemaster Katarn through with his blade and beheading another, forcing the team to retreat. Meanwhile, Cadus' twin sister, Jaina, fought her own temptations of the dark side. Angry and horrified at what her brother had become, she became obsessed with her role as Sword of the Jedi. She sought out Boba Fett, the now Mandalore, to train her as a warrior and to complement her skills as a Jedi. She began training for what she thought would be her inevitable confrontation with her brother. The Mandalorians, being drawn into the Civil War much like the rest of the galaxy, agreed to train Jaina, seeing the rise of another Sith Lord and the following destruction as the repeated error of the Skywalker family legacy. She learned much from the esteemed warriors, their culture and history fostering a greater understanding between the historical enemies. As Cadus' grip of the galaxy tightened, he realized he was losing more and more support as his own followers started to question his actions and loyalty waned. Cadus, after a long period of self-examination, realized that despite his noble intentions, he too had become no different than the long legacy of Sith that had become before him. No longer acting out of necessity, he allowed cruelty and vanity to turn him into a petty tyrant. He vowed to begin conducting himself as he had initially intended, to be a benevolent Sith Lord and act for the betterment of the galaxy. While reaffirming his ties to the Moffs of the Imperial Remnant, Jaina and the Mandalorian raid attacked the outposts. Jaina dueled her brother. She was able to cut off Cadus' arm with the Mandalorian sword before she was incapacitated by a blast of Force lightning projecting from the wounded Sith. Jaina was able to escape the encounter with her life, thanks to distraction facilitated by Luke Skywalker. Jacen immediately headed on a retaliatory strike against the Jedi base on Hapen system, where the Jedi and Hades fleet ambushed the Sith Lord. During the strike, Cadus had another vision of his daughter sitting on a white throne in what appeared to be in a time of peace. This vision convinced the Sith Lord that he would be ultimately victorious, and that his daughter would inherit his peaceful galaxy, after he vanquished those who did not submit. He was satisfied that his vision of a Dark Lord atop a throne had been avoided. The Moffs of the Imperial Remnant, however, had created a nanovirus that could be coded to kill individuals of a specific genetic type. The Imperial Moffs of the Galactic Alliance devised a nano-killer virus that targeted the Hapen royal house and sought to use it against their enemies. Realizing that his love and child would be casualties if the virus were unleashed, Cadus rushed to stop the virus from being deployed. Amidst his attempt to stop the release of the agent, Jaina Solo infiltrated his command ship and engaged the Sith Lord in a duel. The twins fought an agonizing battle. Despite the ferocity of her attacks, Cadus attempted to break away from the fighting and pleaded with her to help him stop the release of the nanovirus that would kill his family. Jaina was unconvinced, suspecting the Sith Lord of lying in order to drop her guard. Crippled from all the fighting leading up to this moment, and under his sister's relentless attacks, Cadus saw one final opening in his sister's defense. As Jaina swung to deal the killing blow, she had left herself open to a counterattack that would have led to both twins dying. Despite his observation, Cadus willingly chose not to kill his sister, as it would be nothing more than petty revenge. Instead, Jacen Solo reached out to Queen Tenel Ka to warn her of the impending danger of the nanovirus, saving their lives, before Jaina dealt her blow. Jaina sensed his last act in the Force, and viewed it as a sliver of redemption for her brother. Despite all the suffering, betrayal, and pain, Jaina cradled her brother's body, weeping.
Thanks for flying with us. Jordan here. Just wanted to let everyone know what's happening here at the Star Lords podcast. Star Lords is now on Discord. If you would like to join the Star Lords Cantina Discord server, you can find a link in the description or on any of our social media accounts. Reach out with a DM or email. We'd love to hear from you. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter by searching the Star Lords podcast. Go ahead and give our page a like and send us a message. You can also email at starlordspodcast@gmail.com. Send us your fan art, Star Wars collections, or fan fictions, and you may even get a feature on one of our pages or even the show. Don't be afraid to offer corrections or add to any of the topics that we discuss on the show. We are also on Patreon, so if you want to help us pay the bills, as well as get a few awesome perks like bonus episodes, access to the private Facebook group, or the VIP section of the Discord server, head on over to patreon.com/starlores and sign up for as little as $1 a month. And finally, make sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher app or YouTube, as well as sending us a 5-star review on iTunes. This really helps us reach a wider audience. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Hello and welcome back to the Millennial Falcon. This is Christian.
This is Jordan.
And we are currently just cruising through the Hapen system, seeing the sights and smells of other parts of the galaxy.
Indeed.
Today we're talking about Jacen Solo, or Darth Caedus. There's quite a bit to talk about on this front.
He's definitely an interesting character.
Yeah, he pretty much became one of the primary characters following like the original trilogy. So for like the new Jedi Order and like the era beyond the movies, Jacen and Jaina both kind of became central characters and, you know, had their own series of novels that followed them essentially from being in the womb to their death, at least Jacen's death anyways.
Yeah.
Let's start off with the obvious comparisons. As people know, this podcast was largely started out of a desire to resurrect the original expanded universe in spite of Disney's new take on the canon. So all these stories, all these history has now been overwritten by the new prequel or sequel movies and the new canon that Disney has created. One criticism that we often level at Disney is their constant claim that there was nothing to go off of and the complete disregard for the old expanded universe. Jacen seems to have been a very strong inspiration for the character of Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
There are a lot of parallels between the two characters. And initially, when I first watched The Force Awakens when it was released, I thought that was the narrative that they were going to go with.
Also, just his name, Ben Solo, is a little on the nose because Jacen's cousin is Ben Skywalker.
Ben Skywalker.
You know, you can see.
Which, okay.
They just switch around the names a little bit.
I'm sure we brought this up in the past. It makes no sense for Ben Solo to be named Ben because Obi-Wan had very little to do with Princess Leia, who is Ben's mother. It makes more sense, like in the old expanded universe, for Luke's son to be named Ben after Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
But they, like everything else, screwed that up.
Yeah, for sure.
But the character
there is a little more logical consistency there.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
In the legends,
as if they almost care about the source material. But I digress. But yeah, we can examine a lot of the parallels between Jacen and Kylo, being the son of Han and Leia, for starters. His struggle with the dark side. I find Jacen's struggle with the dark side a lot more believable and a lot more unique.
It is unique, yeah.
Yeah. And
it's also, I think there's something about Jacen where he's almost very much established as like obviously like a main character and one of the main Jedis in Luke Skywalker's order. And it almost feels like when he finally does turn to the dark side, it's a bit of a shock to the system. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, you have a main character.
yeah, you have an idea of who he is and what he is, you know, and then for him to, like, after the Yuuzhan Vong War and all that, you know, turn to the dark side, it's like such a betrayal.
Yeah.
Yeah. But because there's so much written about him already, the betrayal, I think, feels more
heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more impactful.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you've seen this character, like, grow up, like, from childhood and, you know, become a lot like Anakin, right? And it's hard. One of the struggles of Star Wars, I feel, is, like, they repeat themselves too much. And we repeat this joke all the time. It rhymes.
Yeah.
But, like, it does get boring and stale if you have the exact same kind of, like, oh, it's another Anakin.
Yeah.
But this really isn't. Although on
not.
its face it seems similar, it is very different.
And, like, there isn't really much of a redemption for Jacen, you know, not like Darth Vader and Anakin, or Anakin Skywalker. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, no, this is like completely tragic, and he dies, and he's arguably one of the most powerful Force users ever to exist, and, you know, he kind of goes out in a ball of flames, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Like his whole ability to, like, channel the Force and almost become an avatar when he fights the Yuuzhan Vong, right? Like, he is insanely powerful, and it is ultimately a tragic story.
Yeah.
And the fact that his sister has to kill him, which is, like, foreshadowed even before I think they even knew this is where the story was going to go, because as, like, children, they're forced. It's a very impactful moment when Jacen is forced to duel his sister and doesn't realize it, and then when he discovers it, it, like, kind of puts him off combat.
Yeah.
And, like, for her to later be the person that actually does kill him is a cool narrative take that I think came up as the story progressed. I don't think that was planned ahead, but it was just a cool little tie-in. But kind of bringing it back to Kylo Ren, Kylo also obviously struggles with the dark side, but his motives are super unclear.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges for both Jacen and for Kylo is, how do you fall to the dark side when you have such an obvious warning in your grandfather and his rejection of the dark side and ultimate turn back to the light? It's so hard to rewrite that story of, like, in Kylo's sense, it doesn't make sense for him to worship Darth Vader. Obviously, Luke would have told him that ultimately he rejected the dark side, and look at all the bad things that the dark side did for him, and he ultimately turned away from that. There's no narrative consistency. It makes no sense for him to worship.
We have no
Darth
idea
Vader.
Why Kylo Ren feels the way he does, really.
And, like, Anakin's ghost would be appalled.
Luke Skywalker was going to kill him one time or something.
So now he worships his grandfather, who ultimately also rejected the dark side. It doesn't.
It's so weird.
It's so wrong. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But for Jacen to actually try and use the dark side for good is an interesting take, and that's what I really like.
He sort of flirted with the dark side in order to use those powers in a good way, and in a lot of ways he actually did. Like, he was successful for a long time, until he wasn't.
which also speaks to just that, you know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and, like, for all tyrants in history, like, they are the good guys of their story, right? And so this also, like, resonates with real life, where, you know, tyrants, they start out, and oftentimes, like, doing what they think is good and for the good of the many, and then before they know it, they become the bad guy.
Well, and quite honestly, they're born under, oftentimes they rise out of incredibly tyrannical circumstances themselves, you know, and like a couple of examples that come to mind myself are, like, with, you know, Lenin came out of the Tsarist regime in Russia, which was very oppressive, and then, like, Hitler came out of post World War I and the Treaty of Versailles, and it was like that was like a really horrible time for Germany at the time, you know, and like they were under France's boot for a long time, and you can kind of it's almost like this response to tyranny
is more tyranny.
Yeah, it becomes an even worse type of tyranny.
And those freedom fighters become the tyrants.
Yeah,
themselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, alleged freedom fighters. Let's say. And it speaks to that, like, noble cause, noble intentions. There are a lot of communist revolutions that end up, bloodbaths,
Yeah,
China,
exactly. Yeah.
you know, the Khmer Rouge. We could go on, but yeah,
yeah.
it really resonates with reality and real history.
Yeah.
When you have someone start out with these good and noble intentions, like, oh, I'm going to embrace the dark side for the good of the galaxy,
Yeah.
and kind of take that burden on himself.
Yeah. And they may even be fighting like a legitimate evil, right?
Yeah,
But,
and then they become evil.
and that's like the moral ambiguity of like history, and like real life. That is like, it's not, history isn't just cut and dry of bad guys versus good guys.
Yeah, there's all kinds of nuance.
Yeah, and
it's like Nietzsche says, like, be careful when fighting monsters that you don't become monsters.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You know, when you use things by any means necessary, how that becomes like the mantra of people who end up doing worse than the thing that they're trying to prevent.
Yeah, yeah, and it ends up like in real life, it becomes like a very tragic story, much like this. Like, yeah, I feel this is, it's almost like realistic in how you would think things would play out.
Yeah, even like the establishment of the GAG.
Yeah.
Becoming like Mara Jade like calls it from the beginning, saying like, no, I don't want any part of that. It's going to turn into a secret police, and lo and behold, that's what it does.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of bringing this back to Kylo and Darth Vader. So we don't understand why Kylo worships Darth Vader, but it's something that both Jacen and Kylo have to kind of come to terms with if they're going to become Sith. Is also, okay, so Darth Vader tried this and he ended up bad. What makes me different?
Yeah.
And Jacen's ability to walk into the past and see
Right.
and observe Anakin and his decisions and compare and contrast his own motivations against Anakin's motivations, I think was a really good touch that allowed you to understand how Jacen could continue down the path of the dark side in spite of his grandfather. He's like, I'm not like him. I'm different.
Yeah.
I'm doing things for, again, the motives that we talked about versus Anakin's motives, which he considered to be selfish, right?
Yeah.
So I really like that, his ability to like glimpse into the past. And this feature, I forget what it's called. It's called Something Walking. But this comes up quite a bit in his story and that ability. He uses it to influence, I forget her name, his younger brother's girlfriend, who he ends up kind of seducing to the dark side.
Yeah, I can't remember her name.
Yeah,
We
just off the
mentioned
top
it
of my
in
head.
the-
Yeah, she's in the episode. If you
Earlier
just
in the
scroll
episode,
back, and
yeah.
someone's probably screaming at their radio right now with her name, and we can't hear you, so don't bother. But he uses that ability to seduce her to the dark side because he gets her to go back and visit with her younger brother, and he lies to her and tells her eventually she can learn to like visit with him in the past because he had died. But he manipulates that because you can't interact with the past. You can't change the past. You can only observe.
Yeah.
A cool little feature of that too is kind of funny to think about when you watch the prequels.
Yeah.
Is thinking that Jacen Solo is like watching all these
You're right,
events too,
yeah.
and especially when people think it's in private that like Jacen is
I was totally just
witnessing
thinking
it.
that.
So we can all pretend to be
Yeah.
Jason when we watch the movie.
Yeah, that's what the movies are, is actually just
Jason's point of view.
Yeah.
You're actually watching the real prequels
Yeah.
when you watch the sequels. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Another interesting parallel, like there's no way Disney didn't rip off Jacen when they created Kylo Ren.
Yeah, for
because
sure.
like especially the stuff with his parents. So
Yeah.
Jacen has a very contentious relationship with his parents. So does Jaina, by the way. But Jason's ultimately turns into like, for a while, this doesn't ultimately become the case, but he does get kind of on the track of my parents will be the sacrifice that, you know, fulfills me as a Dark Lord of the Sith, which is exactly what Kylo ends up doing too.
Yeah, it's the same through line.
Yeah, and even though Jacen drops that kind of line of reasoning, it's definitely there for Kylo, and there's no way they weren't riffing off of that story element.
Yeah. And Han never reappears as a Force
as a
ghost.
Force ghost. No, it was a memory. Yeah. No,
Whatever it was.
no
I have no
excuses.
idea what it was.
Yeah.
It was something.
It was called a paycheck for Harrison Ford is what
That's
it was
true.
called. Anyways, and also another interesting thing. So I would have, again, when I first watched The Force Awakens, I was actually quite furious when the movie had ended. I was quite angry that we had just watched A New Hope reskinned. But I thought the only redeeming factor of that story was that they were going to set up Rey to actually be Kylo Ren's sister. and they would have a duel, and it would be very cool. And they might even flip flop. Rey might start out good and become the bad guy, and then Kylo might become the good guy.
That would have been like cool.
And if they were
arc.
siblings,
Yeah.
and that's why Rey has that like Force connection with him and all that stuff. Like
If they wanted to be subversive,
Yeah.
something like that.
switch
Yeah.
swap sides.
Yeah, like you're expecting Rey to be like the good hero, and
Yeah.
then she ends up being the villain, and vice
yeah,
versa.
that would have been. I would have given them a pass if they'd done something like that.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they didn't. And that's what I initially thought is what was going to happen. I thought Kylo and Rey were going to be brother and sister, and they were going to do a switcheroo.
But they were, what was it? A duel in the Force or
A
something?
dyad?
A dyad.
Yes. Which again, if they were siblings, okay. But
Yeah.
just coming up with this concept out of nowhere, and Jacen and Jaina
I
have a
actually
very.
I don't hate the idea of a dyad because there is a precedent of that in like throughout Star Wars of like to like Luke and Leia.
Yeah,
you
and
know,
that's exactly it. It's their twin connection.
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
what I was about to say. Jason and Jaina have that powerful twin
Right.
connection as well. It's mentioned a lot in
but it's
their
more than
story.
just a biological. It's also a Force connection.
It's amplified by the Force.
Yeah.
So that could have been a perfectly good explanation.
Yeah,
and they
totally.
just- Yeah.
But no, yeah.
No, exactly.
It's just they are because reasons.
They are because we said they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of coming off that train, Darth Caedus. We can talk about the naming convention. So, interesting thing about Darth Caedus. So, Sith naming schemes often have words in English, obviously, that they kind of are alluding to. Darth Sidious, Insidious, Darth Vader, Invader, Darth Maul, either the weapon, the blunt force weapon, or the idea of mauling something, like the act of, I don't know, extreme violence, but mauling. However, I don't know what the dictionary definition of maul is, but to ravage something, right? Darth Plagueis, plagues, things like that. Darth Caedus is interesting. So first the name was chosen in a fan contest, actually.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. The writers put out name a new Sith contest, or Darth Who contest, I believe it was called.
Huh.
And they put forward, like, they would go through like different rounds of voting and stuff. And the 5 names they were going to choose was between Darth Acheron, which is a cool name, Darth Caedus, Darth Judicar, Darth Paxis, and Darth Terrell. And they all have
I like them all.
meanings associated with it. Yeah. Darth Caedus is definitely my favorite, and that's obviously the one that ended up going with.
Yeah.
There's some
Yeah, but they could make different characters.
Yeah,
out of
all those
them.
Darths could still
Yeah,
exist
yeah.
as a Darth somewhere.
Yeah.
But Caedus itself is interesting. There's a couple of, I found 2 different Latin meanings, and I don't know which one is telling the truth. On Wikipedia, it's associated with cutting down, killing, slaughtering, or referring to persons slain, or bloodshed and slaughter, which makes sense for a Sith Lord.
Yeah.
Just in general, and I guess Darth Caedus as a, warlord to be. But another Latin, I guess, definition I found was Caedo, Cader, or Cedi. Now, I'm not a Latin speaker, so someone, again, who probably studies Latin is screaming it at their at their stereo. But it's Latin verb meaning to kill, to cut, or to sacrifice. Which the sacrifice part actually is really
more prescient.
To Darth Caedus' story about like he had to make a sacrifice to transcend to his Sith title. So that one does make sense in that context. Just some other cool facts. Jacen was initially created by Timothy Zahn, who people know from the Thrawn trilogy, most importantly, who's been, a long time Star Wars writer and written some of the best content for Star Wars. He didn't have a lot to do with Jacen's later development, but he introduced the character as like a fetus, I guess.
Yeah.
In a lot of his stories, like the twin children do take on a persona within Leia. Like while she's pregnant with them, they develop a Force bond, and she's able to kind of communicate and feel things between her and them. So that's just a cool little fun fact about the character. And so even though Disney has gotten rid of the EU, Jacen kind of has been referred to by, again, another fan favorite, Dave Filoni. Jacen's name lives on through the character of Jacen Syndulla that carries the same spelling. Jacen's name is spelled with a C instead of an S to make it Star Warsy and less real world.
Yeah.
But Jacen Syndulla, who is the son of Hera and Kanan Jarrus from Star Wars Rebels, he gets named Jacen as a homage to this character. Which I mean, I'm hoping he's only the last we see him. He's a kid. Hopefully, he doesn't follow the same path, and he does have a sister as well. So maybe they're setting up for Jacen Syndulla, the rise of a Sith Lord,
perhaps.
But
you know, if ever there was like a reboot sequel trilogy, I think I definitely want to see a Jacen / Cadus
return.
Yeah. Even if it wasn't exactly the same, because I doubt anything adapted for the big screen would be the same.
Yeah, they definitely take liberties with it.
Yeah, if they just took a lot of the same elements, I think that would be good. And really, like, to me, I think that would be, for storytelling, just get you to really buy into Jacen as, like, the new Jedi
hero.
Yeah, the hero. And then just, like,
pull the reversal on
just
people.
to, like, stab you in the heart as he falls.
I wish, like, obviously they couldn't have done that with Anakin because we were introduced to Darth Vader first.
Right, yeah.
But I feel like had they not done that and introduced to Anakin, it would have been a great story. And I like, part of me debates introducing my kids to Star Wars in that way, and just start with the prequels, and you have this noble character, and then unfortunately, I think they're too heavy-handed with Anakin, showing his dark side tendencies in the movies.
Yeah, it might give it away a little too much.
Yeah, like, obviously he's like signaling very heavily he's going to become, something.
Maybe it feels like that in retrospect, but you don't know.
The Clone Wars TV show, one of the awesome things about it is it really fleshes out Anakin as a hero with a dark side that could be exploited versus, mostly bad with some good qualities.
Yeah. And
I really credit that show with giving more depth to the character of Anakin and making his fall to the dark side a lot more tragic, I think, as it is supposed to be, and as Jacen's is, right? If you're a young reader who started out reading, I think it was Legacy of the Force that started all this. It was like a young adult YA teenager novel series, right? So you start out reading these books, you grow up with these characters, and like as you kind of reach your early 20s, they start releasing like his fall to the dark side and all these like kind of crazy things that really like gut punch you, you know, which I like. It's a sign of good storytelling.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
But on that note, it looks like the Queen of Hapes wants to have an audience with us. I think she's picked up some transmissions and
oh dear,
to hear our take on the story of Jacen.
Indeed. May the Force be with you.
Yeah.